think we're ready to kick things off. Well, Jessica, as always, thank you, for hosting and organizing and doing everything that you do behind the scenes. For anybody who isn't as familiar with Startup Grind and the group itself, it is a global community. There are over, I believe, 300 active chapters. And the numbers kind of go up and down. I think at one point pre-COVID, there was close to 600 chapters around the world. So not only are there constant events going on, but outside of that, there are a lot of support and resources that can be accessed as well. So for anybody who is interested, if you are a founder yourself, if you are looking for additional help or support, feel free to reach out to Jessica or myself, and we would be happy to get you tapped into both the Startup Grind community and then also the Orange County, tech community, more locally. And we are, once again, doing another virtual event. I believe, if I'm following along correctly, Ravi, you're up in San Francisco right now.
Believe it or not, I'm in OC today. So, yeah.
You're back. Love it. It's getting a little too chilly up there.
Yeah, I guess so. Too much fog.
Cool. Well, I think NFTs are definitely something that, people have seen a lot, thrown around lately. I believe Coinbase, I think it was, just, launched their marketplace. And, you hear about kind of course, these astronomical prices that people are paying for some of them. But at the same time, at the surface, while it may seem like just another piece of, digital art that gets thrown out there, there's so many additional uses. And I'd imagine, Ravi's going to go into this and really ignite a lot of passion for us. Ravi is actually currently a partner at Rutan and Tucker. I believe Rutan and Tucker is the largest law firm in Orange County. I actually utilized them myself when I was going through some business negotiations, and was really impressed, of course, with the team that you guys have over there. So it's exciting to see that a major player in Orange County is already leaning into, kind of this web 3.0 stuff, which, it does feel like we are in another wave and boom within the tech space after, kind of now getting everybody connected. Now it's okay, what else can we do with all of the technology, the capabilities that we have access to? So I will turn it over to Ravi, let him go through his presentation that he's prepared. And then what we'll do as well is we will, of course, leave plenty of time at the end for any questions. If people do have questions, feel free to type those into the chat. We can relay those along to Ravi, or once again, we can kind of save it up for a discussion at the end. So with that, thanks again for joining us, Ravi.
TJ, thanks for the intro. And Jessica, thank you both for having me here. And for those of you that have already clicked to attend, I appreciate you, because 5:30 on a regular day is already tough, but 5:30 on a pandemic day, wow, it's even more difficult. So my props to you. I am going to try to give you as much sauce, there's as much game as I can, and distill this sector for you in the leanest way possible. So I'm just going to share my screen. Let me just put that on here. And hopefully you guys can see that okay.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great. So just by way of background, that's me pre-pandemic, no beard. I'm a former Verizon engineer. I've worked in San Francisco, Tokyo, now I'm in OC. As TJ mentioned, I'm a partner at Rutan. I love tech, following markets, and cars. So today's talk, got to brace yourself because there's going to be some memes. We're going to try to keep it real light, but they're coming. We're going to get into some of the current trends and market insights and some of the high dollar opportunities that are out there. We'll get into some of the best practices on the legal side, so you don't just like create a project and then get into a lot of trouble. And then we're going to talk about some of the marketplaces like TJ mentioned. So let's start with the headlines. The media loves the headlines. And back in March, this was one of the headlines. This character, Beeple, sold an NFT for $69 million. So in this particular one, this was a digital artist where he had done a new piece of digital art every day for 10 years. he went to Christie's, the auction house, listed it for sale, and set this ridiculous price record at 69 million bucks. That's a pretty good, life-changing, if not generation-changing amount, right? How about these guys? These digital apes sold for $24 million. Now you might be thinking, okay, I could understand if you're doing art every day for 10 years, but a bunch of apes, 24 million bucks? What's going on here? Okay, well then, what about this one? This just happened a month ago. Dolce & Gabbana, the fashion house, came out with some digital fashion. Nothing you can wear, it's just stuff that you can see on your computer. But they sold it for 6 million bucks. So what is going on? So how did we get here? Well, COVID has caused market displacements everywhere, right? I mean, it's hard to find good people as far as potential employees. You can't go anywhere. On top of that, there's high liquidity in the market. So we represent a bunch of clients in all different industries. And because of the money printing, all kinds of weird stuff is happening. I'm sure all of us have seen real estate prices, the price for used cars, the price for wood, for example. So there's weird stuff going on out there. But when it comes to NFTs, you could really have this interesting story of what happened in a particular order. So like, first things first, there was the equity markets, right? Which is just like your S&P 500 and NASDAQ. Those started to go up in price. Then we started to see the crypto markets go up in price. From there, we started to see even more money enter the system, and we started to see meme stocks. From meme stocks, we went into meme crypto. And from there, we went into other assets because people were running out of places to put their money. From there, we saw people really pile money into collectibles. So think Pokemon cards, sports cards, that kind of thing. From there, we saw the transition to the virtual world. And that's where NFTs really started to come in. Now, fast forward to the present day, and it feels like there's a new NFT project coming every few days, while the older OG blue chip projects have mooned. Really, they've skyrocketed in value. And we'll get into all this in a little bit. And part of the thing that's really difficult, like we saw that first painting that sold for 69 million and the other one that sold for 24, is how can one equate that into real world dollars? I mean, that is generation changing wealth. But the thing is, we have to understand that a lot of the folks in crypto are early adopters. So they may have been buying Ethereum when it was 50 cents. They may have been buying Bitcoin when it was $1. So what their liquidity might be is very different from those of us that are looking at it now at like, $3,500 for one Ethereum, for example. TJ had mentioned this issue of Web 3.0, and I think it's an important backdrop for founders and technologists to understand this. In the early 90s and 2000s, we were really in Web 1.0. So Web 1.0 was the static web, right? You go online, maybe you go on AOL Instant Messenger if you're as old as I am, and you chat with people. Now, Web 2.0 is kind of like the early 2000s and mid 2000s. That was the social web. So you saw the Facebooks and the Friendsters and the MySpaces. And we started to see with the advent of mobile devices and us having constant internet access that more and more services came out. So we had Airbnbs and the Ubers. Now, and I think now and probably for the next 10 to 15 years or so, based on what clients are telling me, we are in Web 3.0. So you're going to see a lot of talk about Web 3.0, but really all you need to take away from it is that Web 3.0 is going to be the decentralized web. So this is where the cryptocurrencies are going to come into play. This is where NFTs are going to come into play. And a lot of the AI and use cases that I'm going to talk about in this. And in my opinion, in Web 3.0, smart CEOs will pivot. So this is an interesting picture from The Verge, where Mark Zuckerberg was asked during an earnings call, so tell us like what is happening with Facebook? And he's like, well, the social network is becoming a metaverse company. So what does he mean by metaverse? We'll get into that. And this is just more setup, and this is not to show off or anything like that, but my LinkedIn inbox is filled with Web 3.0 job offers, and this is just as of the last week. This is a talent recruiter who's looking for a DeFi manager in San Francisco. This is another one where it's a crypto trading startup, and it's all based on Web 3.0. And the reason I bring this up is only because I think if you're looking for something new, or you're looking for maybe a new vertical with the company you already have, getting some of these skills might create tremendous value as this ecosystem develops. Now, going back into the metaverse, there's a lot on this screen, and I don't want you to read everything that's here. I just want you to understand that the metaverse is just the virtual translation of what's going on in the real world. So, if you want to go to Universal Studios or you want to go to Disneyland, effectively there's going to be experiences in the metaverse. So you're going to be able to go online. It might be virtual reality, but there's going to be places you can shop. There might be art galleries, that kind of thing. There might be ways to go to different stores. So it's just really real world stuff that's happening online. That's the real takeaway there. All right, now that we have that backdrop, I'm really excited to get into NFTs. I was talking with Jessica before this discussion began, and this is just a screenshot of a Twitter conversation in February. This is when NFTs were really starting to skyrocket. And I can tell you, my phone and email started to blow up around this time because clients were like, what the hell is an NFT? And if you can see on the stream, people are like, I feel so old right now. What is this? And honest to God, I'm sure you guys agree, I don't want any more acronyms. So I hate the fact that we have another acronym. It's not like we don't have enough already, but NFT, here we go. So NFT, WTF, right? Let me just start off with a few simple questions. And, it's just for the group, but do you understand the concept behind membership cards? I want you to think about Costco. Now, what about rewards on credit cards? I'm sure all of us understand that too. Now, what about getting tickets to VIP access events? I'm sure we all understand that as well. Well, if you understand all of those things, guess what? You understand NFTs. And that's really what the big takeaway here is today, is that NFTs are just a medium to do certain things. And we'll get into those. So I think what loses a lot of people is this concept of what is fungible and what's not fungible. In the first box there on the left, what you'll see is $1, some gold, and some coins. Now, those are fungible because you could trade $1 for another dollar. You could trade one gold bar for another gold bar. You could trade one Bitcoin for one Bitcoin. They're completely non-unique. You can replace one thing for the other. Now, on the other hand, at the bottom here, you'll see that there's non-fungible. And that's the two letters out of NFT is non-fungible token. So non-fungible, what is that? Well, think about your house. You can't simply just swap one house for another house. It's unique. It has its own address. It has its own location. It has its own size. Think about a painting. You can't replace the Mona Lisa with another Mona Lisa. There's only one. It was drawn once. It was drawn at a moment in time. It's sitting in a museum. Same with the digital world. If we're talking about Super Mario, for example, there's one Mario. If you're thinking about a movie, maybe the new James Bond, there's only one James Bond, right? So that's really what you want to remember. When you're talking about non-fungible, you're talking about something that's unique, whether it be physical, whether it be digital. So NFTs represent ownership of a digital good. It could be an image, it can be a video, it could be a song, okay? They're unique tokens, so they certify authenticity so that when someone's on the blockchain, they can say, hey, Jessica owns this piece of art, or Ravi owns this piece of music. Now, just like cryptocurrencies, they're tracked on the blockchain, and they can be exchanged on the blockchain. And unlike crypto or dollars or euros, they're unique. They're one of one. And just like we mentioned, one Bitcoin may be identical to another, but each NFT is one of a kind. So NFTs provide you with certain rights. And I think that's what's lost on a lot of the stuff that you see in the media. It's really fun to say, well, hey, I sold this JPEG and I sold it for $69 million. It sounds obscene. It gets a lot of mouse clicks. But the thing is, these NFTs come with certain rights, okay? And that's what makes them valuable. So NFTs, if you look under the hood, they have a smart contract, especially if they're built on Ethereum. So the party that creates the NFT can include terms with it. And these terms may define descriptions. So, okay, maybe it's a picture of that ape, for example, and that ape might have certain rare traits to it, like only 5 apes have a certain hat, or only a certain amount of apes have a certain type of color. And you can imagine the more rare the trait is, the more collectible it becomes. Further to that, the fun part is really where the money comes in, because you can assign a certain royalty percentage on the NFT. So what you can do is you sell your first NFT, and then you could program the contract to say, hey, NFT, every time this thing is sold, I want a certain percentage of every time this thing is sold after I've already sold it. So that's really where the big value is, because in the traditional world, say you have an iPhone and you sell it on Craigslist, right? Once you've sold that iPhone, you've got the money in your hand and you're not the wiser as to what happens after that. But imagine if you sold that iPhone and then the guy you sold the iPhone to sells it to someone else and you still get a piece of the pie after he sells it. That's what the NFT value proposition is. Then it's the flex, okay? Can we all agree on something? We like to have stuff in the world that we care about. You know, whether it be for clout or bragging rights or signaling. You know, some of us like Nike shoes, and when you wear Nike shoes, you're telling the world something about yourself. When you wear a Rolex watch, for example, you're telling the world something, maybe about where you stand in society. So there's a flex aspect to it. But NFTs extend that same utility and flex to the virtual world, okay? This was an article on CNBC published in September. And the NFT holder said, look, I spent $170,000 on this because I could flex online. And to me, that's more important than having a Rolex in real life. So we really have to reframe our mind to understand what's happening in the virtual world. And similarly in the metaverse, we talked about this earlier. Mark Zuckerberg's all over this because he knows this is where things are going. Now, this is a screenshot of a virtual environment. If you look on the far left, I hope it renders okay, but you can see a Shiba sort of humanoid there in the left. But it's a virtual environment where someone could come over to your house and they could see these really fancy things. And for some people, that really matters. This picture that I just put up is of a virtual art gallery. So imagine that you've collected all these pieces of rare art and you want visitors to come to your art gallery. Presumably, you could charge an admission fee, and then folks would come to see your rare art, albeit in a virtual way. This is not dissimilar to video games. If you think about it, people have been spending money, whether you play Candy Crush or you play Fortnite, to have rare things that signal to folks in the virtual world that they might be better than thou. So this is just a screenshot where if you spend $1,500 real world dollars, you can get this costume for your character. This is an interesting one. This is an Apple Watch, but believe it or not, this costs more than any Rolex probably that's out there. That screenshot, assuming that you're the actual NFT owner, that picture of that ape is $170,000, right? So on your wrist, to those that are in the know, you're wearing, whatever an Apple Watch costs, $399 plus $170,000 on your wrist. And unless you're in the crypto world, no one is the wiser. So let's get into the real NFT sauce. Now, the party that mints or creates the NFT gets paid for their work, right? It makes sense. If I create a piece of music or a piece of art and I sell it to you, obviously I have that money now. But as we said before, usually when you sell something, it's a one and done. You create a work of art, maybe I paint something, I sell it on Instagram, and you're done with it. You do not participate in the downstream revenue. But using NFTs, you can program that smart contract. So you get a piece of the pie every time there's a sale. And what I want you to know about this is that in general, the usual royalty rate is around 2.5%. So imagine that. You get 2.5% or more for the rest of your life if you're able to get a collection going that people are interested in. Going back to the Bored Ape Yacht Club, so they came out with 10,000 of these apes, and you see a bunch of them here. Some of them have different traits. You know, maybe they're a red skin or they have gold skin like this one does. And the rarer the trait, the more valuable that particular NFT picture is, okay? But beyond that, I want you to see that they had something like $500 million in sales since February. And their smart contract says that the people who created these pictures get 2.5% for life every time these things are sold. So I did some quick math. 2.5% means that they've made $12.5 million just on third-party transactions of people buying and selling pictures of apes. That should really make you think. Now, getting into commercial rights. Imagine getting represented by William Morris or CAA or some Hollywood agency just because you own an NFT. And this is something that really doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's important to know. So one of these people bought a picture of this ape. He's wearing this gold jacket with a gold chain, cool sunglasses. And this creator just got signed by a Madonna and a manager of U2. This came out in Variety just a few days ago, October 12th. So they're going to have representation by real world talent managers just because they own the NFT. In the case of the Yacht Club, full commercial rights were granted. So if you bought the NFT, that means that you could create a story around this picture of this ape. You could make a novel around that ape. Maybe you could put that ape in a video game. You got all the rights. That's really what the value proposition is. And assuming everyone in this community of 10,000 apes was consistently doing something cool, that means the value of the ape that you bought is now much more valuable. I hope I'm not losing anyone, but that's how crazy this new business model is developing. Here's another one. So this is an ape, and the person who bought the ape created a Twitter account for this ape and called them Jenkins the Valet, and created this whole novel about how this NFT character was a valet for all these other apes in the community. Well, he got signed by CAA to write a novel about this. In fact, created his own project called The Writer's Room. And CAA put out this huge press release that this world-renowned author is behind this ape. In fact, 6,900 Writer's Room NFTs were minted, and they sold out in 6 minutes, yielding this ape $1.5 million in 6 minutes. Kind of crazy. So the other thing that you should know is that NFT ownership is equivalent to club access. So it's not unlike paying for a really fancy country club or a golf club or maybe even a really high-end purse club. The Yacht Club is again an interesting example because if you own one of the Bored Apes, you can actually attend a yacht party in real life. Now you're gonna have to verify that you actually have ownership of that ape before you get on the boat, but literally they're chartering a yacht in New York, and all of the owners are invited. So it's really like this real world, virtual world interplay. Let's get into some of the use cases. Now, the picture here is of an anonymous user on Twitter who's kind of prolific. He goes by Punk6529. And what he has here is a timeline. And what I want for those of us in the startup community or even a more established community to understand is that, who cares about collectibles, right? Like, I have a real business. Why are we on this call right now? And what I want you to understand is that there is a cultural shift happening right before our eyes. And just like the Renaissance back in the day, it all starts with collectibles and art. And it's important to understand that meme culture is driving price deltas. It's causing entire real world events to change. So if you think about GameStop, if you think about AMC, if you think about NFTs, it's all based on a little bit on memes, but it starts with collectibles and art. And that's where we are right now. And it's going to extend to gaming. I promise you. Brands are coming on board next. And then we're going to start to see a lot more activity on Metaverse. So if you are part of Startup Grind and you're trying to figure out where do I put my chips and you want to have some potential asymmetric upside, I highly recommend that you start looking at what's happening as far as gaming and brands and culture, and how you can get ahead of that. Because I think that is where you could really have a business that really takes off. So we must think broadly, okay? Snoop Dogg is an interesting character because he's been a really early adopter in this space. I don't know if it's him personally or if he has really good advisors, but he just set up an NFT collection where there's 1,000 passes, and he's going to throw a concert online. But if you don't have access via the NFT, you can't participate in that. So that's one embodiment. Another one. This is an interesting one. So Sean Puri, he's another guy who's really popular online. He runs a super popular podcast, and he said, "Look, I'm going to sell this NFT. I'm going to list it for auction, and if you win that auction, you get a right to have airtime on my podcast, and you can do it anytime you want. So you could wait till I get 10 million users, or you could wait till I have 20 million users, and you're locked in because you bought this NFT, and you could call in your chips whenever you want." So that's another really interesting thing. Maybe selling airtime. Can you imagine if someone was to buy Super Bowl commercial rights using an NFT? It's possible. The next frontier, though, is probably music as an NFT. A lot of the stuff that gets attention online is, well, JPEGs or maybe a movie clip. But I can foresee, and we're seeing some DJs and prominent actors get into this, where you could create music and sell that as an NFT, or maybe a portion of it, and make some money on using it that way. So obviously I have a lot of information, so I'm going a little bit quick through here, but I want to give you all the value add. So if you meet someone that's in this industry, you're armed and dangerous. Meme culture is super important in this space, just in general marketing and launch terms. But this is a launch that just happened a week ago, and you'll see that instead of the 10,000 that the Yacht Club did, this group came out with 8,888. Now, if you're familiar with the crypto space, the number 8 is very important because there's a huge Asian contingency that's interested in the NFT market, and there's a belief that the number 8 is lucky in Asian culture. So the thought is that you could attract maybe some of the crypto whales to your project if you use the number 8. And if you may think that, well, hey, Ravi, like, why are you talking about this Mecca community? What about big name brands? Well, would you believe that McDonald's just came out with NFTs internationally, and they're giving away 188? Do you think that the number 88 was just by coincidence? Now, beyond that, there's other numbers that have provenance in this culture, and that's I hate to say it, but it's 420 and 69. In my first slide, I had mentioned to you that the artwork sold for $69 million. Now that bid is not by coincidence. They bid $69 million because it's funny and it's a meme, and they have that much money to spend. So why not make it 69, right? This was a tweet just from a few days ago where, I mean, you can see how much engagement they're getting. He broke the NFT Da Vinci Code because it's 69, and that yields 420.69. But these are the cultural plays that one must understand from a marketing perspective. Okay. There are some legal issues, though, okay? You can't just go out there and just put some pictures online and all of a sudden you're going to be a millionaire tomorrow. There's copyright problems, right? And just by way of background, whenever you watch a movie and you see the FBI warning says, well, hey, you cannot reproduce or use this without written consent. Same with NFL. But when you have a copyright, you have some rights. You can reproduce it. You can distribute it. You can create derivative works. So you can change it up, remix it, make your own version of it. And you can perform it in public. You can display it in public. And if you think about it, we just talked about the metaverse play. So like if you have an art gallery online, or you have a virtual house or virtual real estate, that's where it gets really interesting. And the chain that you use matters as well. This might be a little bit too intricate for this talk, but I just want you to know it. So you just have the issue down. But CryptoPunks was one of the OG collections, and this is like the blue chip of the blue chip. So imagine it's like buying a Rembrandt or buying a Picasso, which may seem frivolous because it's like Ravi, I get it. Like it's like a guy with a hood and a guy smoking and it's pixelated. Like how is that possible? Well, these were made on Ethereum, and if you want one of these, the lowest price today is 100 Ethereum, or roughly $350,000 in USD terms. But there are copycats, okay? Just like there's a counterfeit Louis bag, there's counterfeit CryptoPunks. But they made it on a different chain. You know, I told you that when you're on a certain chain, it's unique. But a different entity came out with CryptoPunks, but on the Solana blockchain. Now you can see the value delta. These are only worth $900 a piece, and I suspect they will never reach the true provenance of CryptoPunks. But there are potential copyright problems here. So what I don't want you to do is find a valuable brand after this chat and then go online and then create this on a different chain. I don't want you to get into legal trouble. So I'm just bringing this up for you to know. There's also trademark problems, okay? So when we're talking about trademarks, I want you to think about logos like Nike, brand names or identities like Just Do It. You know, maybe it's a character like Super Mario. Maybe it's a name like you know, Panera Bread. You don't want to use them. However, if you come up with something unique, we might be able to trademark it for you. And there's some strategy to that. And what I want you to think about is how will the product be protected? You know, do you want to protect the artwork, or do you want to maybe create merchandise around it? Maybe you come up with hoodies that have your brand name on it. Maybe that's the protection strategy. And then we will, on our end, try to help you figure out how to classify. Beyond that, though, there's also publicity issues, okay? Now, the right of publicity means, you know, if you're Steve Aoki or you're Madonna or Jay-Z, you have rights to publicity. So what I don't want you to do is come up with an NFT where you find your favorite song, you put the snippet, and you try to sell it. Don't do that. There's technical solutions too, though, and that's the patent side. And for those of us that are technologists, maybe you're a software person, there's entities that are creating solutions in this space. You know, maybe it's to have a quicker transaction, maybe it's just to have like digital rights management, but there's tech around that, and you could potentially patent it. I did a quick search, and there's something like 1,300 patent apps on file right now. So it's still, in my view, super early. But there's a lot of stuff coming out of Korea, China, and Japan. This is the real meaty part of this talk, and this is where I feel like a lot of people could get into a lot of trouble, and that's securities law, okay? There's different types of tokens. Let's start with that. And I feel like people don't do a good job of talking about this, but it's really important to know that the way your token is defined could really change your outcome. If you're a utility token, you're in the clear, it's benign. But if you're a security token, oh my God, you're gonna have a lot of fun. And what I mean by fun is you're probably gonna go to jail. So there's three different types of tokens: utility token, security token, and equity token. If you're in the NFT space, you wanna try to be a utility token. So let's see how we make that happen. What do utility tokens do? Well, they give you certain rights, like the right to service. And you can exchange a token. So it's kind of like maybe like a coupon of sorts where you could exchange it for a service. Or they can be used as payment. Hey, I have this token, let me enter this blockchain. Oftentimes these utility tokens are offered as incentives, and they act as a store of value or for payment purposes. So NFTs, how could they be maybe a security? Well, if you're a security, then you have to register with the SEC, unless you have an exemption, which I highly doubt. And if you're a participant, you need to register as a broker-dealer. You know, I thought that was meant for NASDAQ, you're probably guessing, or Dow Jones. Well, believe it or not, if you do this wrong, you're gonna have to register. And the temperature at present is so cold, and there's a reason for that. It's because the information contained in these securities, they have to be complete because there's so much risk to people who buy these things. And as I said before, there's potential criminal penalties. So we're going to want to be super careful on these next few slides, right? The problem is that NFTs are really in this stage where it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. There isn't that much regulation, but trust me, it's coming. You can't make millions of dollars and not have the government in your pockets. And the takeaway here is that regulators are slow to act because in my view, they just don't understand or they're simply unaware of what's happening out there. So CyberKongs is a really interesting study. And you're probably thinking like, Ravi, like how many different examples can you have where there's a monkey or an ape? Well, I don't know why, but in crypto culture, they just seem to love the apes. So this is important. So you have a picture of this ape. And why am I bringing this up as an example? Well, if you bought one of these apes, then the promise was that you would get 10 banana every day. And this banana was a type of currency of sorts as an incentive to purchase these things. And over time, the value of these bananas have gone up significantly to the point where if the promise was you get 10 banana every day for the next 10 years. And at the rate of what bananas were going for, it was something like $900 a day just for owning one of these pictures. If you do the math, something like $300,000 to $400,000 a year just for owning this picture. Kind of crazy. And you can see this is how it was displayed on their website. Every Genesis Kong yields 10 banana a day. You know, and what do you use this banana for? Well, if you want to change the name of your monkey, you know, that's 10 banana. If you need to update it, you know, maybe that's 2 banana, but you get the drift. Now, there's some case law for this. And back in 2017, we were inundated with clients that were doing ICOs, and they were coming out with new currencies. And they were like, well, oh my God, like we could raise money using an ICO, let's do it. And it's just like every few years, there's a new thing that gets a lot of attention. So like, you know, a number of years ago it was cannabis. Some years after that, it was like everyone was a 3D printer person. For a while, everyone was in crypto. And now NFT kind of has that vibe. But some of the stuff that happened in 2017 is very applicable now. So the SEC came out with this idea of utility tokens, and the SEC took a position. And their position was that even if you're a utility token, it can still be a security. And this is where a lot of these brands are going to be screwed. And as recently as December, if any of you use Coinbase, if you had any RPX or any Ripple currency, you probably remember this. The SEC said, well, hey, you guys are selling utility tokens. And the marketplaces took the position, well, hey, we're not going to get in trouble for that. You can't trade these things. So they froze the assets. Same thing might happen to some of these NFTs. It's ongoing. So how do we do a gut check then? Well, there's this thing called the Howey test. And I don't want you to write this down. This is what your lawyers are for, or I could be, you can email me, I'll share that after the talk. But it's like a 4-part test. And what the SEC would do is they'd see if you have an investment contract. They'd try to see if you have a quote unquote common enterprise. They try to see if there was some expectation of profits. So it kind of has to have the vibe of an investment. And then they would see if that would be derived from the efforts of others, or if it was like something that was just network effect. I'm going to just skip through that because there's quite a bit. But the interesting part about that, if we go back to CyberKongs, is that I went on their page earlier today and I took this screenshot. So they have this disclaimer, and clearly they must have lawyered up, because now, yeah, you can earn 10 bananas a day, but they tell you that bananas that fuel this ecosystem are not an investment, but they have no economic value. Okay, so help me understand. So you're telling me you're going to pay me $900 a day to own this picture of this monkey, but it has no economic value? I think they're walking a very fine line on this. Okay, so why don't we bring it all together, and then we'll roll this out. So where are we then, and what comes next? How can we be futurists? Some of the evolving issues are smart contracts. I think if you're a company or if you're a developer, if you want to get into the next big thing, I think try to learn about smart contracts. Understand that there might be some enforceability issues, but I can help you with that. There's also this issue of like being anonymous, because like you can imagine like the people who came out with the cyber Kongs that I just mentioned. Okay, fine, like you're giving 10 bananas a day to these holders of these NFTs, but like who's behind it? And if everyone's anonymous, I think there's going to be some what they call KYC provisions, like know your customer provisions, where people are not going to be fully anonymous. The next also big thing is going to be what they call DAOs. God, I hate giving you guys another acronym, but DAOs are like this entity where it stands for decentralized autonomous organization. It's basically a bunch of people that hold a certain NFT, and then you make a group. So that group could like vote and that sort of thing. And I have a slide for that. But these are the three big things where I feel like if you think about it, you could really have a huge value add to your company or create your own thing around it. I'm just going to skip through that. So this is the whole thing about DAOs. So if you see here on the left, a traditional company might have a CEO, and you've got your managers and non-managers, and then maybe your junior folks. The DAOs are going to be where everyone is connected, and not one person is more powerful than the next. And this group, using the blockchain, will be able to make certain decisions for the NFT. So maybe, hey, should we come up with a second series, or should we airdrop something to everyone who's holding it? Like maybe we give a free gift to everyone. And you can kind of see that that kind of setup here. You've got the people in the middle that all hold the NFT, and then you see to the left, like maybe they have voting rights, or maybe up top maybe you get certain currencies, or maybe they vote on which contractors to use. So that's kind of an interesting structure that I think instead of LLCs, eventually you're going to see DAOs. Just be on the lookout for that. Almost to the end here, I just want to give you a cheat sheet. So if you want to screenshot this, it might be useful. But I want you to think about the purpose of your project. Why are you creating it? And I want you to craft your narrative with precision so that you don't get in trouble with any legal issues. I also want you to think about the marketing. Does it relate to an asset? Are you marketing it as a collectible? Or are you saying, hey, we're going to pay you every day to own this thing? You're going to be in big trouble if it's the latter. Now, I want you to think about your token. Are the people who hold the token going to have investment returns, or is it just kind of this thing where it's a collectible? Is your governance decentralized, or does one party hold the bag? That's going to be important too. And then I want you to think about hierarchies. So there's a lot going on here, but these are kind of the cheat sheet things to really think about. Just give people a chance to. And that's kind of the end there. And I have my email and everything on there. So people are welcome to ask questions, and we can get into that now. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, no, that did. Thanks, Ravi. It was, I at least from somebody who's slightly technical, but not super technical, it was a nice, kind of dipping the toes in. And then, of course, anytime you can wrap it around some case studies, it really goes a long way. Something I'm kind of curious about, and it seems to happen with any new, space and kind of product in general, is people see an opportunity, they come sprinting into the market. You have some really quality players, but then you have a lot of people who are either completely, like just trying to do a money grab, and they know what they're doing is wrong, or you just have the people who are coming in kind of, it sounds like, the banana guys, who were just really weren't aware of some of those things. So I don't know if you want to call anybody out. Is there any players that we should keep an eye out for, or just kind of notes that you can say, okay, that's a red flag, heading in a different direction?
Yeah, that's a really good question. This space is evolving. So one day in NFTs or 1 week in NFTs honestly feels like a month, because there's a new project that comes out, or the rules slightly change, or the model changes for how to make money off of it. Some of the early projects didn't have any of these, like banana, or we pay you to own it, or that sort of thing. But this marketplace is evolving, because like imagine there's a new project coming out every day. So you're like, okay, on Monday you could buy a crypto kitten, and on Tuesday you could buy a crypto turtle, and on Thursday you could buy a toad, right? So everyone's like trying to get the money grab, and as there's more and more supply of these projects, the projects are not selling out. So they're like, okay, well, how do you attract people to buy your toad or your kitty or whatever it is? And so the way that they're attracting people is saying, well, hey, if you buy, my toad, maybe you get my fly currency, or you get certain, you buy the dog and maybe you get puppy chow currency. I know it sounds ridiculous, but
Yeah.
that's literally how these things are being marketed. Those are the projects where, yeah, you might buy it now and you might make a quick buck if you sell it in a few weeks. So it's a quick buy and flip. But if you come out with this project yourself and you came to me, TJ, I would say, please be careful. Do not market your project with, hey, we're going to drop you some currency just for owning our project every week. Because the currency comes out of thin air. That's what a lot of people don't understand. The banana has zero value on day one. It establishes value once there's more user uptake. So
essentially, a lot of it comes back to the marketing and language that's used around it, less so just the NFT itself.
Absolutely, that's where the liability lies. So you're going to want your marketing folks and your technical folks to talk to each other, which especially virtually seems to not happen as much these days. But you don't want to just show off like, oh my God, look how much money you're going to make. You really want to say it like, wow, this is a collectible, there's rare traits, and keep it at that.
And then Liam had a question. Can NFTs be minted to represent data ownership rights? So, for example, your user data within a social platform.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the social web is going in Web 3.0. You remember about a week ago, Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp were down all on the same day. So Twitter went nuts for this because they were like, well, obviously it's centralized, right? So the Facebook company owns all of those properties. And if they're all on one web server and they're all on one, all owned by one company, it's centralized, it can go down at any moment. But the future of social media is going to be decentralized, where I think users are going to be able to own their data. Now, query whether you would want to sell your timeline or not, but I suppose it can be done.
Cool.
So, being in the space that we are, I know there's a lot of different companies thinking about, okay, how do I even make one of these? I had somebody ask me the other day, like, hey, I'm thinking about making, for these college athletes, maybe we start making them their own digital trading card online. It's like, but how do I even do it? I'm like, I have no idea. So if somebody was thinking of starting a business like that, you hire an attorney and then hire an artist? Like, what do you do to even start this type of new venture?
Jessica, that's probably a good way to go about it. I mean, you want a lean team probably early on, but you're going to want some creatives for sure. And historically, I feel like creatives are always undervalued. And I feel like I have a creative side, so I love doing like presentations and talks and stuff, because otherwise I feel like I'm just a boring lawyer. But creatives now feel like they're really in the limelight, because you could put together a picture and it could be like JPEGs, and now all of a sudden you've got $20 million. You're out earning an NBA athlete. And from the outsider's eye, it seems so easy. So you're going to want to have a really good creative team. I've seen people on Fiverr and some of these other websites offering to draw stuff for you. So maybe you have a good concept and you create something that way. That's like sort of path number one. Path number two is they actually have this code. So they're going to put together like certain traits, and you can imagine these buckets. So the bucket has like, let's just talk about the apes. Like it could have gold fur, it could have metallic fur, it could have silver fur. And then the next bucket would have like, it wears sunglasses, it wears a hat, or it has a cigarette. You could use AI to mix and match those traits and create 10,000 pictures for you. And so what happens is, that's what they call generative art. And so that generative art is really where it gets super intriguing, because you just set up the algorithm, it creates the project for you, And then people get super excited because, wow, now I got this real super rare NFT because I got the one that has like, it looks like a robot monkey with like laser eyes and like, you know, smoking a cigarette. Like it shouldn't have happened, but the algo spit it out. So that's a separate path. It's like generative art. The other one is like using the creatives. So maybe that path requires maybe, you know, hiring someone who knows AI and then maybe another creative person and, you know, put both those boxes together.
All right, interesting. All right, so as of lately, I've been working a lot in mentoring startups in the blue economy, and everybody's, you know, trying to figure out, okay, is there a way for the blue economy to also embrace this crypto NFT space? Because, you know, for the most part, the blue economy is still one very new in its infancy, but also it doesn't quite understand this space. So for me, how do I help them try to understand like this area and how they could potentially leverage it? Because I don't even totally understand it, even though you did a great job. Like I followed you, but like, okay, where do I place this now? Do I need to be in a totally different sector, or can really any sector look at going into NFTs and leveraging this?
So Jessica, for as long as I've known you, you've always had really good big picture. So I respect the question a lot. I think to the extent you're mentoring people, or for those folks on the call, I know this was a brain dump for me. I took stuff from all the stuff I've learned, clients I've counseled. I tried to give you a little bit of game on everything I've seen along the way, hopefully to inspire you that you could literally come up with a project in 2 weeks and you might be like $20 million richer, you know. I'm not saying to do a quick cash grab, but I'm saying like that's how much opportunity there is. That's how early this is. This is, you know, we said in the advertising materials it's like 1999 or 1997 or whatever for the internet. That doesn't mean it's going to go away overnight, but I'm saying that it's so early as far as how many people. I mean, we just had a 1 hour talk about it, and I feel like even I learned something after doing the talk, right? So I can imagine those of us that are still on the call learning about it. When you think about NFT, do not leave this call thinking it's just these JPEGs, okay? Leave this call knowing that NFTs could be used, if you're an artist and you want a new ticketing system, you should be thinking about NFTs, okay? Because you could have royalties. Maybe people sell the ticket downstream and you get 5% every time the ticket is sold. But the first time it's sold, you get access to the event. But maybe the ticket is still a collectible, like, oh, well, I attended the Drake concert in 2021 and there was only 50 of us. And so maybe that still has value to someone. And then 20 years from now, you still get 5% of that. So think about it then. If you're a technology company, think about how you're executing your product, because maybe there's a way to do it on the blockchain. It may not necessarily be NFT, but there might be a blockchain play. And when we're talking to VCs or people who've got the big bucks and deep pockets, they love hearing that you've got some blockchain under the hood, So that's something that, talk to your technologist, talk to your attorney. Let's see how we might be able to throw that into the cocktail of what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Definitely, from conversations, investors are all over blockchain. Like they want to see how you're utilizing that technology in what you're doing, especially if you're a SaaS company or anything like that. They're like, okay, well, how are you connecting all of this stuff? Why aren't you utilizing the blockchain? So definitely agree on that. Any other last bit of, nuggets of information or where people can go read more about this if they want?
Yeah, so I think if you want to get really deep in the game, so I like Gary Vee, a lot of folks like his content. Believe it or not, I think a lot of the stuff he says in this space is really on point. So I would check out some of his content. But I don't want you to go buy an NFT tonight and think that, by Friday or, by next Friday, you're going to make like 10 G's or whatever. Don't do that. Okay. Usually a lot of the stuff that you can go buy is highly illiquid. And the feeling you get of purchasing it sounds cool, but then you're sitting on it and you're like, oh my God, I just spent 20 grand on an NFT, a JPEG. So you start having these doubts, because my first NFT, I did that. Okay. I bought a mutant ape, which is a derivative of the Bored Ape, I spent like 15 grand on it, not trying to show off. It's just that this is the industry I represent. So I felt like if I'm not participating, I'm not going to be able to counsel folks, right? I bought it and I was so excited. I got the email. It's like, oh, your offer went through. I told my wife, I'm like, oh my God, we won. And she's like, you're so stupid. Like, really? So, and then, you know, I went to work the next day and I was like, oh my God, did I really just do this? So the feelings of like sort of dissonance, I was like proving it to myself, well, hey, I represent people. It's all good. So don't do that. Spend at least a week researching, okay? See what you like, what you don't like. See what has value, what doesn't have value, and start to participate. Go on Twitter, see what Gary Vee is saying. And really the real sauce is happening on Discord. So there's these Discord groups, and that's where a lot of the movers and shakers are. So try to find the Discord groups. And for those of us that aren't on Discord, it's just chat rooms. That's really where a lot of the real stuff is happening. So
on that note, Ravi, so, you know, you had mentioned, of course, the SEC being involved, and, you know, some of these are, or a lot of them are being treated as securities. So in your case, if you turned around and sold, you know, the security for a loss, could you write that off on, you know, or you know, kind of balance out capital gains from the other side? You know, so like while there is the risk of it, I mean, losing's never fun, but
losing's never fun. But you know, I think tax rules allow you to like, and I'm not a tax person, so you know, ask your CPA, you're a qualified professional. I'm a lawyer, right? I don't see why not. I mean, in one sense, you're just, you know, transferring currency from one thing to another thing. So, you know, if you have like, say, 5 Ethereum, you take 5 Ethereum, you buy a picture of a monkey, and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? And then you turn around and sell it for 2 Ethereum, so you've lost 3. You know, can you write off the 3? My gut instinct says it's possible. But, you know, how is it different from I go out and buy a Toyota Tacoma and yes. It's an asset as well. And all of a sudden now I don't want the Toyota and I lose 10 G's. I don't think I could write that off.
Yeah.
So, you know, there might be some case law that comes out about that.
Interesting. Do you see, and you know, maybe this has been something that's been discussed, have there been any like, are the people who had signed, let's say with Madonna's, you know, talent agency, are they kind of seen as somewhat as potentially being sellouts, considering that they've gone from kind of this underground, you know, group to now, oh, now we're being represented by Hollywood?
Yeah, I think there's a big camp that want, like, the whole point of crypto is to be totally anonymous and like, you know, you hate the government or whatever, and it's like, and you know, maybe like everyone's like, you know, Snowden fans or whatever it is, but there's minority of camps in every community, right? So you're gonna have some people, no matter what you do, whether you're a startup in OC or you know, you're like the guy who's getting represented or woman who's getting represented by Madonna's crew, people are gonna love you or hate you. But I feel like if you receive the commercial rights, if I bought this ape and that means I could write a story about behind it, hey, don't be mad that, you know, I was creative enough to take it to the next level. In fact, if you're also an ape holder, you should be happy because now I've established more brand value for you, right? I've got a movie coming out. Now all of a sudden your ape is more valuable. So, you know, you can see it a couple different ways.
Got a lot of ape movies coming down the pipeline.
I don't know what it is. They just seem to love monkeys. So,
yeah. About, you know, Fortnite and the skins. My son's all up in Fortnite right now, and so I was like, oh, okay, I understand it. Like, this is language I'm getting. So do you see a potential like crossover between like, okay, NFTs, these apes, these assets, and now maybe other gaming devices, or even in Minecraft? You know, my son also plays that, where you can now merge these assets into different platforms and you can actually utilize them more in gaming and where you are, or are they going to keep siloed?
That is like such a wicked point. So that's really what I think the future is going to have, right? Like when Super Mario came out in the 80s or whatever, we weren't part of that, you know, whether we were of age or not, we didn't have any say in that. It's like Nintendo came out with it and you get to play Super Mario, right? And maybe you get Yoshi down the line. But now, if you have the IP, you've got the ape, right? And if they decide to make a video game around that, you participate, right? And then let me take it one step further. I mentioned that thing at the end and I kind of went fast because I felt like I might be losing people, but it's the DAO thing, DAOs. Imagine then, like Jessica, TJ, and myself, we all are ape holders, and we're all decided to participate in this DAO. So all three of us have the same voting rights. All three of us decide, well, hey, should we come out with with a video game? All three of us can vote on that. So I think that's where like the whole like business structures are going to change in the next couple of years, and it's all going to be powered by this whole NFT thing. So that's where it gets kind of really cool. I don't think it'll be siloed.
Interesting. All right. Okay. All right. Any last questions from the audience before we call it a night? Let Robbie go have dinner with his family. And myself, I need to go make dinner.
Lucky you. I'm hopping to do another event.
Oh man. All right. Well, I think that's it. Well, thank you, Robbie, so much for a very informative presentation. Definitely helped me wrap my head around it. I hope everybody also found usage out of it. We've put our LinkedIn links inside of the chat. Please feel free to connect with us. And thank you again for joining us this evening. And thanks, TJ, for hosting while I got a couple cough drops and my throat's killing me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good night, y'all.